Okay, well, it is 5 o'clock on Thursday, April 4th, and we are wanting to get this meeting started. We do have one member that we are waiting for, so we will hold on starting this meeting until we have that quorum. Okay, yeah, it is now 5:12 and we will begin this LTAC meeting. Looks like we do have two members in the room, one on Zoom on phone. So we do have a quorum at this time. And I will call this meeting to order. First things first, we will do roll call. And we'll start over here.
Michael.
True.
Alyssa Fontaine. Shannon Kelly Fong.
And Malcolm Miller.
Chad.
Oh, sorry, and on the phone, we have our other member of the committee, Chad Carpenter.
Yes, I am present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Next on our agenda, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our September 25th meeting?
So move.
Seconded.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Let's see, did we have any public comment today?
We have not received any written public comment.
So there is no written comment. There is nobody here to give public comment. So we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Next on our agenda is the 2023 award review. And for that, I will hand it over to our Assistant City Manager and our Finance Director, Shannon Kelly Fong and Troy Wu.
Well, good evening, LTAC committee. It's good to see you all. Just to kind of set the stage, we talked about hosting this meeting late last year after we had made the recommendations for the 2024 LTAC, was to come back and talk about what happened with 2023 LTAC and then to take a look planning future-wise moving forward for 2025. And so that's the purpose of why we're really here today. And the first thing we wanted to start off with was reviewing our 2023 awards. And so Melissa, if you could start the PowerPoint presentation. This is also included in as part of the packet, the materials that we're going to be going over. One thing I do want to make a note of is the first document that we're going to take a look at is going to be a document that talks about what the expenditures were in 2023. And it does indicate a 2025 budget, but this is just a document that the city uses in anticipation of getting ready for the 2025 budget. And so the purpose of it is to really show you what the actual expenditures were in 2023. And so with that, I will turn it over in just a second to Troy. I'll get through a couple of slides that I have planned here. So we'll go over the 2023 awards and event data as well. And then we've got a pretty extensive list of things we want to take a look at for 2024 for the 2025 process itself. So we'll get into more details there in just a second. So I'll turn it over to Troy.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Good to be here. The committee has seen this format before, so hope it looks familiar, but as Shannon said, we want to certainly present to you the results of the 2023 budget. Revenues came in a little bit higher than we projected, but that is reflected in the 2024 projections, and you can see at year end we brought in $73 short of our 24 projection. So pretty close, not trying to brag or anything, but we did pretty good and we're kind of spot on there. We did use beginning cash as the budget did anticipate a little bit less than we had budgeted at 353,000, almost 354,000. But we didn't quite spend as much, but the main reason of that, I'll remind the committee that we had a $250,000 capital piece that we gave to the Washington Center. So that's the main use of that cash. So it really matches that one-time revenue in terms of reserves with one-time expenditures. So certainly appropriate.
Melissa, can you blow that up just a little bit, please?
I don't know, please.
Okay, there's Chad. Okay, good. Thank you.
Hey.
In terms of expenditures, I think if you kind of go down the list, sorry about the size of the font, but we only had one festival that didn't actually take place. That was Brats Brews and Bands. But Everything else took place. I think, you know, this is a committee that put a lot of emphasis in getting back to normal, getting back out there and interacting with our community members. And I think that exactly happened. But if you went down this list, most of the expenditures and awards were nearly 100% spent. So, you know, again, no surprises. We had a few that didn't quite spend as much as awarded, but, you know, we're looking at actual expenditures that occurred. So we do pay these festivals and operations based on a reimbursement basis. So they actually do have to incur the expenditures. So again, no surprises. So in total, we spent 866,000. We were budgeted for 887,000. So pretty close.
Yeah, I noticed some of these, didn't spend, but yet they asked for a lot. I mean, I guess I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like the barbecue festival was $5,000 short of what they asked for. I don't remember them being like that before, but anyway, it's just an observation on asks, you know.
Yeah, it's fairly common that, you know, they don't spend the entire allotment. I mean, it is a budget and best guess as to what might happen. So like I said, it's based on actuals. In terms of cash, you know, the committee has always been interested in the cash position at the end of year. So we ended the year with about $857,000. You know, we carried forward the same reserves that the committee has given us guidance on. We do have about 40,000 that we are budgeted reserves in 24. We have 500,000 for the replacement of the rack synthetic fields. And then there's a 2-month operating reserve of just under 100,000. So going into your next budget cycle, there's about 219,000 or so that you could use to supplement festivals and operations or one-time capital, that type of thing. So there's a little bit of room there, and you know, so I think we can feel pretty good going into the next budget year.
Awesome.
So in addition to what Troy provided, there's also a bit more detail that I want to just, first of all, give some shout out to Sadie Siglin, who put all of this information together. Sadie unfortunately couldn't make it here tonight, so I'm pinch hitting a little bit for Sadie. But what I want to just say is that Sadie did the heavy lifting for everything we are about to go over and go through. So she'll be back with us hopefully at the next LTAC meeting. But thank you, Sadie. So what Sadie provided in addition to what Troy provided, and this again is in your packet as the next attachment, is just a little bit more of a breakdown of some of our external funded LTAC events. And what it's showing you is very similar information to what Troy just went over, starting on the left-hand side of this table. But then it also provides you a little bit more detail where it actually takes a look at what they reported as their total budget per their application, what they reported as the cost of the event itself, what percentage of that budget was from the Lacey LTAC per the application, what percentage of the LTAC funding for the event of the whole, and then what percentage of the funding that they used, to that question, you know, Ruth, that you had about, you know, using and how much people expended of their total amount, and then what the total payment was for each of those entities. As you continue along the table that you have and you get into the orange side, it provides you some additional information. And this is in alignment with some of the JLARC reporting that we have to do for our LTAC. And so what it has is the projected attendance, and this is something that the applicants provide, and then the reported overall attendance. What I do want to say about all of this data here in the orange side is that there is no standardized way to provide this information. And so when we're doing comparisons, I think it's just really helpful to keep in mind that it isn't a kind of, you know, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. It's to the best knowledge of the applicant as they're filling it out. So you can see it's got the reported overall attendance and then the difference between the projected and the actual attendance. And then in addition to that, it has the estimated overnight stays per the application, and then the reported overnight stays, and then what the difference was between that estimated overnight stays and the reported overnight stays. I know this was something that the you know, committee had asked to see a little bit more information on, and so we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide that at this meeting. And you can see, again, based on the applications and then what they reported out, what their attendance was, as well as their overnight stays. So Chair, that is the first item we had on our agenda, unless there's any questions that we can answer for the committee.
Can you go back to the previous slide just for real quick? I like how this is what Sadie put together.
That is, yeah.
Okay. So for example, Ole Soccer Foundation, the reported paid overnight stays was 1,000?
Correct.
Okay. And their projection was, their projected attendance was 7,000. They said, okay, so 1,000 are gonna stay overnight. Paid overnight stays per app.
Application is what app stands for.
Okay. And difference between. So it looks like Experience Olympia and, well, no, it looks like Washington Center produces the most overnights. Is it, or is it?
So the reported
UCB?
overnights, again, that would be the second column in from the right. And so if you're looking at the numbers that are provided by the applicants themselves at the end of the year, you can see that the VCB does have the highest at 2,546 compared to the Washington Center.
And both of those entities are not single event entities. Those are 365 entities. So if we were to look at the single event entities, is Ole Soccer Foundation considered a single event or is that a multi-day?
That is also multi-event.
Okay. But not like a 365, like all year round. They're not counting their numbers for all year. They're counting for like, hey, we were in your city for a week.
They have a season and I think maybe Chad, you have some more information on what the season actually looks like, but it is for a period of time.
Okay.
It is a period of time, but I do believe that he included the information for the full year because they do things throughout. They have a season, but they do things throughout the year. So I can double check and report back by the next time we have a meeting for sure.
No, that I'm just analyzing the numbers in my mind and I'm just thinking out loud as I say it. So please don't. Okay, let's go on.
Great. Any other questions on 2023? Great.
Is it me?
Ready for the second item?
I am.
Fantastic. So that is taking a look at kind of some of the stuff that we've done here in between the last time we met in 2024. And again, when I say we, I mean Sadie. Sadie did all of the heavy lifting for this. So what I want to overview are some of the updates and changes that we've made since the last time we've talked. So one thing that Sadie has been working very diligently on is making information really accessible on our website. And this was something that we'd heard a little bit of feedback and not just for Lacey, but just generally with the LTAC process that people wanted to see it a little bit more accessible. And so we've been redoing our LTAC webpage to provide a lot of information on what was funded, what the funding cycle is, how to access the application, who to contact, and all of that. So you can see on the left-hand side here is our updated webpage. And on the right-hand side, we've also embedded a lot of information that people could read and also access all of the previous meetings that this board has had that have been recorded. So people could go back and watch that. We also, Sadie updated all of the documentation that goes out to our awardees, again, to make it a little bit more transparent and accessible. And so everybody received a letter like this that received LTAC funding here in 2024. And it really clearly outlined, what needed to be returned back to the city, including the service agreement, the Exhibit B and the Exhibit C. And then updated the contract itself, really to help kind of operation process some of the service agreements, and then hopefully to make it a much more efficient system for us as well as the applicants here moving forward. So one thing that was added on to the contract is that you can see that we're asking that all applicants who received funding provide us within 30 days of their event their invoices, so that way we can very quickly turn around and reimburse them for their costs. We're also asking for standardized approaches to when they provide us with their reporting information.
Mm-hmm.
So every quarter, especially those events that do span, year long, they will be updating us and providing us with timely information.
So when we're doing our ask for 30 days, is that a hard stop, like 30 days, or is it just like, hey, if you can get to us in 30 days, that'd be awesome. If you can't, we're still gonna honor our agreement.
we're trying to nudge people as best as possible to get those invoices in so that we can get them reimbursed.
But we're not cutting their funding in any kind of way.
We're trying to nudge them, but we're not cutting any funding, but we're trying to nudge, right, to get people to make sure we're turning it in. So that way, again, we can get the funding back out the door once it's been expended.
And that's really not that big of a deal if you're, you know, cause once you finish a festival, I know I was wanting to get all that stuff done and tidied up and.
Yep. And I
Yeah,
understand their
so-
motivation to, hey, we need to get reimbursed. I need, you
Right.
know, to get my $5,000 back.
Right.
But if they don't make it in 30 days, we're not penalizing them.
We're not penalizing. We certainly want them to, you know, work with us to try to get that in to the best degree possible. And again, it helps us not only get the funding back out, but as we're planning for future LTAC cycles to understand what might be available. So Sadie also updated all of the exhibits and made them standardized, so that way every applicant is filling out the same information and it all looks very similar when it comes in, so that way it's easier for both the fundee to fill out and us to understand and report back to JLARC. Future updates that we've identified throughout this process is to make a unique application for events, which, you know, we currently had one application. And what we found through this cycle and heard some great feedback on was that people were like, you know, I'm answering questions that don't really make sense because I'm a facility or maybe I do marketing. And so what we've determined through this process is we need to take a look at those unique applications so that people are only filling out what they need to fill out and they're not adding additional information. And so we hope to really streamline that. So there'd be an event application, there'd be an operations and capital projects application, and then there would be a marketing application.
And those are the big three, or is there,
Those are the three.
okay, it doesn't even need to be granulated further than that.
Nope.
And this is, I think last year was the first year we separated them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was separated out on our rubric,
Mhm.
and it was separated out on something else.
I think, anyway, yeah, no, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah, and the rubric's a really good thing that we'll get into a little bit more of a discussion here in just a second, but the rubric itself, if you all will recall, was designed specifically for events only. And that's again where we heard some feedback from, you know, the operations and the capital and the marketing of saying, well, like, you know, if I'm filling this out, but it's not actually part of the evaluation, is it really necessary? And so that's why we wanted to take a look at that and hopefully streamline it for all parties.
So are we looking to have 3 applications? And when you come into the portal and you say, hey, I'm gonna do an event, or I'm a marketing person or whatever, and you click on that and it takes you to that specific application?
So we're hoping that if the application opens, and we're gonna work through this, but that you would have the first question be, what are you? And you would select either event, operations and facility, or marketing.
Okay.
And depending on what you select, the questions would populate
Okay.
that are specific to your application.
Okay.
And so you wouldn't receive anybody else's questions, but the ones that are pertinent to you.
Oh, we're good.
It's fancy.
Mhm.
We're a big city now.
Another thing that we did since we met last as a body was we also held a regional lodging tax advisory committee staff meeting. So this had representatives from the city of Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County. And we did this back in December of 2023. And some of the things that we discussed were our applications and what were some of the similarities and the differences between the processes between the jurisdictions. And then also just kind of did a high level overview of lodging tax and what lodging tax was. So the next couple of slides just show you some of the information that we covered as part of that regional staff meeting. So for kind of just describing lodging tax itself, we went over what is lodging tax? And you know, it's a special excise tax on the sale or charge made of the furnishing of lodging that is subject to this tax. The tax may be imposed on charges for lodging at hotels, motels, rooming houses, private campgrounds, RVs, and similar facilities for continuous periods of less than 1 month.
So
And
does that mean rooming houses? What about Airbnbs? Is that included?
that would be included. Yep, absolutely. We talked about who could levy the tax, and as we all know, cities, counties are able to, and then what the process was for administering the tax and how it gets reimbursed on a monthly basis to the city. Went into the definitions of what is tourism and what is tourism promotion, and went over those terms. Really focusing on, you know, tourism promotion being advertising, publicizing, or having strategies to expand tourism and operating tourism promotion agencies and the funding of special events. which are designed to attract tourists. Talked about what a tourist-related facility was. And this is really a real or tangible property that has a usable life of 3 or more years, constructed with volunteer labor that is, 3 or more years are constructed with volunteer labor that is owned by a public entity or owned by a nonprofit organization, or could be a business organization, destination marketing organization, Main Street organization, lodging association, or chamber of commerce. And importantly, to be used to support tourism, performing arts, or to accommodate tourist activities. Talked about what the allowable uses are for LTAC. So specifically, now having gone through all of these definitions, knowing what these terms specifically mean, tourism marketing, the marketing and operations of special events and festivals designed to attract tourists, supporting the operations and capital expenditures of tourism-related facilities that are owned by a municipality or public facilities district, or supporting the operations of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by nonprofit organizations. Talked about some limitations. This doesn't necessarily apply here in Thurston County, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but we did a real deep dive on LTAC funding just broadly. Talked about tourism promotion and what the intent of LTAC is and what applicants have to provide as part of their applications. So we talked about this here a little bit before when we were looking at 2023, but this is really saying how each applicant needs to provide those estimates that we went over. And the estimates specifically need to say how many people are staying overnight in paid accommodations from over 50 miles or more away, or from another country or state. And then in addition to those estimates, after the events, the applicants have to then turn in and report the same things that we went over, which again are going to be the number of people who stayed overnight in paid accommodations from 50 miles or more away, or from another country or state. From that point, after we did that deep dive, kind of looking at, hey, what is LTAC? What can these funds be used? What's the purpose that they serve? What's the intent? We took a look at the different jurisdictions and how we do our LTAC processes. So what this is showing you right now is the submission mechanisms for each of the jurisdictions. And what you can see is that Lacey and Olympia have online submissions only. Last year we did allow for paper submission. So people came in, they could get a paper copy. And certainly I think if that was the case this year too, we'd make available some paper copies if somebody needed it. But you can see that Tumwater and Thurston County provide online and in-person opportunities. We took a very thorough look through each of the applications from all of the jurisdictions. And again, this is all Sadie's work. Sadie did this deep dive into this. And we found what the consistent questions were. And what we found is that there were some consistent questions, and then there were some unique questions between the applications as well. So I'm not going to read through every single consistent question, but what you can see is that generally they asked for the description of the event, how many years the event had been available to the community, who the target age group was, how you collect your tourism data, what kind of lodgings you may have booked and where, and then a copy of your business license. So that's just a real quick overview. They also asked some very similar financial questions, which include, have you applied for LTAC funding from other jurisdictions? And if so, if you could provide that amount, what kind of lodging tax funding have you been provided in the past? And including that itemized budget, and what would you cut if funding wasn't fully available for your event program or project or marketing. Some of the unique questions you can see starting on the left-hand side with event, activity, program, or facility questions were some of the broader questions. So tell us about your organization. What's your organization's mission statement? Provide its website. Are you a returning event? And if so, what has changed? Describe resources available to the proposed tourism-generated activities. So volunteers, volunteer hours. Getting into the details of the methodologies of how you are able to estimate and calculate your participants, describing business appeal or if you've partnered with any local businesses and events, how lodging tax funding would increase the number of people traveling to the jurisdiction, how you'll document economic impact, and what organizations have you partnered with. Some of the financial questions were, are you asking for increased funding from last year? If so, what's the reason for the increase? And are you applying for other sources? And then some documentation differences, asking for, IRS Form 990, a copy of the local business license, or articles of incorporation bylaws. So these were some of the more unique things in a scan of all of the applications. So when we look at the applications, what we can say is the majority of the questions are similar. However, how they're asked and where they're asked can look very different, but there are some unique questions that each of the jurisdictions have on their applications. We also took a look at applicant interviews, and what we found at this point in time is that nobody does mandatory interviews. It's not something that everybody has to get in front of every LTAC and present presentations. What we see is that most jurisdictions like Lacey, Tumwater, and Thurston County do interviews as needed. And in the case of Olympia, they don't require interviews. They have no interviews. For applicant scoring and ranking tools, we compared who used a weighted point system, and both Lacey and Olympia used a weighted point system. And what I'll say is we used it as a tool. It wasn't used to make final decisions. But you can see that Olympia also has some sort of tool that does the same kind of process. And then Tumwater and Thurston County rank their applications using other methods and considerations. After that meeting, what we did was we took a look at our the 4 jurisdictions and specifically who they funded in 2024. I think that was another question that this body had and wanted to get a little bit more information on. So Sadie did a really good analysis of pulling the budgets from each of the jurisdictions and putting that together. So what I'm about to show you is some of that funding and what that looks like. So just to start off, to set the base, I think it's really important to show how much funding each jurisdiction had in LTAC money to allocate to applicants. You can see the city of Lacey had around $600,000. The city of Olympia had around $1.3 million. Tumwater around $184,000, and Thurston County around $150,000.
That's 24 though, right?
Wow.
Do we have those numbers? Okay, so, but 23 was a little bit higher for us.
Correct, because of the capital project that
Right.
Troy mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Correct.
Was it also higher for some of the other jurisdictions? 23?
That I don't know, because we looked at 24 allocations, so not sure about what other entities did in 2023 at this point. Importantly, before we get to the next slide, I did want to just show some research that we were doing from on LTAC specifically, and really using the Municipal Research Services Center, which is a nonprofit organization that helps local governments serve their communities by providing legal and policy guidance. Their guidance on lodging tax funding, they have this information that says use of lodging tax funds should increase tourism and patronage of businesses within the jurisdiction. If an event in a neighboring jurisdiction will likely draw tourists and lead to overnight stays in your jurisdiction, then funding such an event could be an appropriate use of funding of lodging tax funds. So what this is showing you is the applicants that received funding from multiple jurisdictions. And that's why I thought it was really important to kind of set the stage with funding things that may not occur in or be in your jurisdiction. And so what you can see here in the teal color is the city of Lacey and what the city of Lacey funded. And then the dark blue is the city of Olympia. The silver color is the city of Tumwater, and then the bright yellow is Thurston County. And so everything it's showing you here received funding from 2 or more of those entities. And you can see there are a couple of applicants that received funding from all 4 entities.
Now that's interesting.
Net. Okay, senior games went light on everybody. Olympia really does pump into the Washington Center, don't they?
And so Olympia provides. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say this is very helpful. So I really appreciate the time taken on this diagram. This has been something that I personally asked for. So I thank you. Thanks, Sadie, for me.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. I'll pass that on to Sadie.
For some reason, I was thinking the VCB was gonna be well over, you know, I thought it was gonna be closer to 400. It's not.
And the comment, sorry, going back to just the Washington Center, I do believe by policy that the city of Olympia provides 2% of its lodging tax to the Washington Center.
2% of its total, or 2% of every dollar they get, or 2%?
Of its total,
So
of lodging tax dollars, of lodging tax funds.
Is it the percentage of what's actually charged to? I think it's 2% of the 4%, then there's sales tax in there as well, so it's.
Okay,
It's closer to
okay.
50%.
Gotcha.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, no, thank you, Troy, yes. So just another way to look at this too, we've got this broken down into table form, and what we've highlighted here in the green color are things that were funded across all 4 jurisdictions, so just another way to look at this.
So block party. They are tenacious. Did anybody get to go to block party?
No.
You did?
I did,
How was it?
it was fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And it was down at the waterfront?
Correct, it was at the port.
And they showed kind of some lazy lodging results.
So I believe, and I don't have the application right in front of me, but what they did say is that they were going to be looking to promote lodging opportunities in Lacey with the idea that they'd come back to provide more information for LTAC on specific Lacey lodging.
Mhm. You know, I was looking at that extra 20 grand that didn't get spent. And I was thinking how cool it would, because, you know, as I drive by the rack, I'm like, man, it would be cool to see some hot air balloons up in the air, you know? And I remember we had, you know, that conversation last year about, you know, how much are we as a city, you know, of the LTAC dollars are we, you know, applying for? But man, I mean, hindsight is 20/20. If I had known we were gonna come up 20,000 short, we would have done that event for sure. Cause I would love some more things for the city to put on, because you know, here's the thing about it. The city events, they're good. You know, pretty much. I mean, like any city event that you go to here is a quality event. And that's what I love about this place. You know, and so I would like.
You just said that today, didn't you?
Yeah. And so I would like to see, I want to see more city events. I just don't want it to be at the expense of the public. That's, okay, there, I said it.
The other thing we looked at in addition to where the funding was going and was what the cycles were for each jurisdiction for their application process. And so we've got Lacey here on the top in the teal, and you can see generally speaking, what we've done is we've had applications open early in August with them being due in early September and then having presentations by mid-September with a recommendation to the city council in early October. Olympia has done something very similar with guidelines being released in July and then the process running through October. And then Tumwater, again, very similar to Lacey and Olympia with applications starting in August and running through October. Thurston County is a little bit different, as you can tell by this diagram here, where their applications open in December and they are due late December. And then the next year, they review the applications in late January and then make final recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners in February. So their cycle is a little different from everybody else's.
And that's for the, so that cycle right there is going to give funding for 24? Like if they start in December and they end in February, they're funding the year, the following year or this year?
My understanding, and I can confirm this and get back to the entire committee, is that it is funding that year.
Okay, so it's funding the calendar year that they actually finish in.
Correct, and I can confirm that and make sure that that is indeed
You don't have to,
true.
it just kind of seems like,
Late,
because yeah, well, everybody else is like, hey, let's get this done before Thanksgiving.
yeah, because if,
So
well,
we're
especially if you're
next year.
planning an event, that's huge.
And there are jurisdictions, just for awareness, that do have different cycles than the ones that we're showing here. So yes, you can have, you know, slightly different cycles and what that looks like.
So, the Olympia releases their guidelines in July. What is that about?
That is an excellent question, and we can certainly follow up with our regional partners. We're gonna have another meeting with them planned for April 19th, so we can ask specifically, hey, what does this look like? But I would assume to some degree, it's kind of what they're looking for in applications for that funding cycle.
Yeah, it's just, it seems like maybe they're just saying to the public, hey, here's the rules from the RCWs. Here's, you know, what we expect. And then they start and then a month later, they open it for applications. So you don't have to learn as you go if you're new.
Yep, and we can confirm that again. And a lot of that information, though, we also, you know, again, in trying to increase the information and knowledge on our website, want to make sure it's readily available year round of, you know, what is something that would meet the criteria of LTAC funding.
Sure. So it seems like guidelines should be available all the time, like what you're saying.
Yeah, because people need to know if they even fit into being able to apply.
Yeah.
And then if you're drawing up your budget for an event, yeah, it's critical that they.
It's also transparency on our part, like,
Right.
hey, here's the laws and here's what we expect.
Sure.
Should be available all the time.
And you know, I think maybe here's what we expect and what the committee is looking for could change, you know, to some degree. And so that might be perhaps some additional information that is provided in addition to what the state law is.
Yeah, and that was my next comment was like, if guidelines are released and guidelines get updated, then it would seem as if like you'd have to have like, that might be why they post them in July, just because if something changes, they don't want to just hang it out there for November, December, January, and so on.
Yep, and again, we're gonna have a regional meeting, and I think that's a great thing, just to make sure that we kind of understand what that looks like and what that process is and why. So in addition to all of that information, you know, again, based on some of the feedback we heard and how we'd already talked about, hey, we need to create a unique application for events, operations, and capital projects and marketing. We also thought it might be a good opportunity to take a look at what we would be potentially scoring them on. Last cycle, again, we just used this as a tool to help make decisions. They weren't the final decision maker, but it was only for events. Specifically. So operations and capital projects didn't go through this type of assessment and marketing didn't go through this type of assessment. And so what we've done here for you all tonight to have a discussion on is we've drafted some rubrics that would be applicable to all three of these. And we took the events one as a base. We made a couple of tweaks to that one, which I'll go over here in just a second. And then we ran through the questions and we said, what's applicable and what's not applicable? And we scratched the things off that we thought, hey, this doesn't really work. And then we tweaked them slightly to have a better fit with operations and capital projects and then marketing. So as an example, what you're showing here, and I know this is pretty small on this screen, is the events rubric, which again, this body used last year as a tool. And you can see one of the changes that we've made here in this draft is on project impact. We now have it under as paid lodging impact. And the reason for this was when we were reviewing the questions, we said, hey, project impact seemed very closely aligned with tourism attraction. And so taking a look at kind of the LTAC parameters per state law, we thought this would be a really good opportunity to align it with overnight stays. And so now what we have in this draft, the question says it demonstrates the ability to increase paid lodging nights in Lacey. And then when you get to the details of what that actually looks like for a scoring mechanism, it says it's a total of 20 points, which is our highest kind of point score for any of the questions that we ask here. 20 is the highest. It breaks it down into multiple steps. So the first award of 0 would be that it doesn't demonstrate the ability to increase the number of people traveling to Lacey or the Lacey UGA. 5 points would be that you demonstrate the ability to increase the number of people traveling to Lacey or the Lacey UGA by less than 100 paid lodging nights. And then it would go up to 10 points if you could do the same and show that you had 100 to 500 paid lodging nights, and then 20 points for demonstrating the ability to increase by 500 plus lodging nights. And so the idea would be, again, in kind of just a review tool, this would be something where we could take a look at, you all could take a look at, you know, what the applicant information that was reported maybe from a previous year or what was provided as part of the application and use that as some information to gauge this particular question. The other question that we changed in the draft here is on financial sustainability. And the question just kind of added a little bit more specificity by saying demonstrates the ability to secure additional funding beyond the city of Lacey's lodging tax funds. And very similarly, to paid lodging, impact, it provides a multitude of options for, to be scored under. So 0 would be does not demonstrate the ability to secure other funding. 5 would be demonstrates the ability to secure other funding at a rate of 1 to 50% of the overall cost. And then the 10 points, which was the total for this question, would be demonstrates the ability to secure other funding at 51% of the overall cost of the event. I'm gonna pause here and see if the committee has any thoughts, ideas, concerns, questions about what we've drafted here.
I do. So the ability to put heads in beds, we know that, you know, that's our mandate, that's what we're all about, with this situation. The only thing I don't like about, you know, saying you get more points if you put more heads in beds is that there are some entities who, like the military wives. Right, they're a 1-night event, they're at I think this time they went to the Lacey, the community center.
Did they go to the
Community
fair?
center
They
this
went to
year.
the fairground one year and then they were gonna update it to the community center the following year. They're not necessarily putting in heads in beds, but they definitely do bring value for the military community that we have here. And so, you know, this is one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we do in-person interviews. If the committee wants to see that group, because they wouldn't score very well with that. But they're definitely worthy of some of these dollars. So that's just a comment. It's not asking for you to change anything, but I could see how if you were, you know, applying for this, you would think, man, you know, I don't demonstrate an ability to do this many heads and beds. I don't just demonstrate an ability to be financially solvent on the next time I'm doing this or whatever the case may be, but my event is something that does bring value to the city. Because we have such a high military community or, you know, we have such a high senior community here. You know, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 26%. And so if those guys are providing value, but not necessarily putting as many heads and beds as VCB, you know, are they, you know, that doesn't mean they're less valuable to us. As a whole, and the value that they bring to this community by having their event. So I'm not asking you to change your rubric or anything like that. I'm just at this point, like, you know, with that consideration, I'm grateful that we do the in-person interviews and we actually get to sit with these people and make funding decisions like that. But this is a helpful tool, but I know it can't encompass all of those things.
And heads in beds is a real hard one to determine when you're filling it out. Because there's a lot of people that come from, well, like with Fun Fair, I mean, they come from all over. But we don't know how many of those actually stay overnight. We can tell our vendors, from our vendors, the ones, but not as far as the general public. It's really hard that's a hard one.
It
For
can
any
be,
event.
it can be, but I mean, I'm glad we have a scoring
Oh,
model.
yeah, we need
It's
to,
cool,
yeah.
you know, it really helps, you know, it helps us kind of like, okay, we've got, you know, and we've asked all the relevant questions. But sometimes I feel like, you know, the value in these events isn't always exactly how many heads they put in the bed, even though we know that's where our funding comes from.
Right.
You know, we know that. But sometimes the value is, you know, seniors, you know, getting to, you know, have an event at Rainier Vista or I guess 23 Kitchens or whatever. Military wives being able to, you know, come to our city, bring their families, have an event at the Lacey Community Center. And even though they may go back and, you know, stay the night on base or whatever the case may be, and they only put 20 heads in beds, are they less valuable than someone else? I don't think they are. So there is sometimes value outside of, you know, just how many dollars can you bring to the city? That's all.
And I think, just, go ahead, Chair.
Oh, well, another thing is though, how do we know when they're gonna come back some other time to take part in something else in our city and decide to stay overnight? I
Mhm.
mean, we just, it exposes them to our city.
So I just want to kind of reiterate that the rubric itself is just designed to be a tool to help kind of start the conversations on funding, and it's not meant to be the, final decision maker. That's you all make the recommendations, and then we take that to the city council for the final approval. And so what we just did with the rubrics themselves was we took, again, knowing what the intent and what's in state law, and tried to create something a little bit more aligned with that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the comments.
You bet.
So we took this as the base, and then we, again, like I mentioned, kind of just cut out things that we didn't think were applicable. So for operations and capital, it's not very shorter, but it's a couple questions shorter. So it talks about tourism attraction, it talks about safe and inclusive and welcoming communities. It also talks about paid lodging impact, and it continued to have the question on community and business collaboration, financial sustainability, what the location was, and then multi-day and shoulder season. For the last two, what it does, and this is one of those tweaks that we had from the event, is that it has the ability to host events or programs for multiple days in the year that attract visitors from 50 miles or more for a multi-day event. So rather than, it being, held by this entity, that they're hosting those types of events. And that for shoulder season, it also hosts programs during the shoulder season that would attract visitors from 50 miles or more between October and April. For marketing, we took out a few more questions from what was asked in the operational and capital. And so it asks you about tourism attraction, and then it asks you a question specific to marketing, which we had taken out from the previous one. And then it also asks about safe, inclusive, and welcoming communities, the paid lodging impact, the financial sustainability. And then for shoulder season, what it asks is that it promotes events occurring in Lacey or the UGA in that shoulder season. So the kind of questions and the breakdowns are provided in the packet, but very similarly, some of them have multi-tiers based on, lodging numbers and being able to have financial sustainability like we reviewed with the events. So is there any questions on those two draft rubrics, or any tweaks you'd like to see, or comments?
Point totals, they're all the same?
They are not all the same, because there are less questions for the other two than events. It goes down with the fewer questions you have.
So 110 for marketing, 125 for capital, and then what was our first one?
145.
145?
Yep. And the idea is that they wouldn't be compared against each other. So you wouldn't have a comparison of marketing with events. They would be separate. So you could say, if let's say you had 5 applicants under marketing, they would all be based off of the 110 for marketing, and you can get a priority within marketing. You would get a priority within operations and maintenance, and then a priority listing between events and activities.
Right. So
I like that we separated things out. I think that is super helpful, and it keeps like things with like things, apples to apples, oranges, as best as we can. So I really applaud this. This is great. And I also like the fact that we still get to be the final decision makers. This is a tool, and then we can still have the conversation. So I really appreciate that as well.
So one of the last things regarding kind of the things we're looking at planning for this year is we'd like to talk about dates for the next cycle. And so I know it says 2024, but that should actually be kind of 2025 up there. But what we are looking to do is start the process a little bit earlier. What we found during the last couple of cycles is that we get really close to when Troy needs information for the budget. And since we want to make sure the budget is getting out on time, we're hoping to move this up a couple of weeks and to open up applications starting in the 3rd week of July. So on July 22nd, and then letting it run through August 30th. So it'd give applicants 6 weeks to fill out this information. In between that time, we are hoping to be able to have host some sort of workshop where we can meet with applicants and talk about their applications and provide them information so that they can fill it out. And we're gonna be talking with our regional partners about maybe joining us in this endeavor, so they could talk to multiple people, because we do know some people are funded by multiple entities. And so that's something we're gonna be discussing at our next meeting on the 19th. So we're hoping to get all of the applications turned in by August 30th, by 5 p.m. And then our hope is that we can schedule LTAC meetings with you all every Thursday in September, so we can get through the process.
What? Every Thursday.
Well, I mean, that's up at the discretion of the board, but what it would allow is the first one, September 3rd, would be, we'd get the applications to you, so you would have it. And so you wouldn't meet the first Thursday, so that is a good point of clarification, but the process would kick off, you'd be involved. And then you would have 9 days to get through all of the applications and review it. We'd come back and meet on September 12th, we'd go over them. You determine if you'd want any supplemental presentations. And if you did, we'd have them scheduled for that next Thursday, which would be the 19th. Every one of the applicants would know that in advance to hold that date as a potential to come before this body and talk about their event or their marketing program or their capital project. We'd go over the scoring rubrics, very similar to what we did today. And then in between the 19th and the 26th, the body would score, return it to the city, and then we would put together the information so that you all could have a discussion on the 26th and make a final recommendation.
Okay. When were you planning on going live with this?
Going live with
Well, finalizing these things, this new rubrics, when were you planning on? Because I know you want to get it out July 22nd, so it looks like we have a little bit of time. I mean, here we are, early April, so as the committee looks at this, how much time do we have to, get back with you with commentary, maybe some adjustments, some changes if we see something?
So I think there's a couple of options that the committee could consider. So number one, that could be what we use as one of the meetings in September when we do the application review, is to really finalize what the rubrics look like. And that way, when you're going through the presentations, and then in between the presentations and the next meeting, you could actually do the scoring. So there could be an opportunity there.
Okay.
If you wanted though to have this finalized beforehand, so applicants know exactly what the rubric would look like, then we'd want to likely schedule another meeting between now and July 22nd to finalize that, and we could get that out in front of the applicants before they actually fill out their applications.
Gotcha.
So there's two options that the committee, and there could be more too, but those are the first two that come to mind.
All right, well, I think several months, I think what I'd like to do is, in the next 30 days, as we take a, deeper dive into all the rubrics, if you have any commentary, just make sure you send it over. I don't think we can all be on the same email, but we can definitely email you separately.
Yeah. Yes, please, individual emails, and we're happy to compile it and show the body kind of some of the comments we heard and maybe some edits and suggestions that we'd have at a future LTAC meeting.
Absolutely.
So with that change, I just wanted to kind of show you again what this would look like regionally. And again, we're still in alignment with a lot of the other jurisdictions. We'd just be starting the process a little bit earlier. And as I mentioned, we're hoping to set up a future regional LTAC meeting with staff here on April 19th, and then a future regional LTAC workshop for applicants at some point in time in the July timeframe.
Okay, so I like the workshop idea. I really do, because for those people who look at the application and are like, confused, or they don't quite get it, or they're not sure how to answer a question. I get that all the time. Like, what do I put in this spot? So thank you for adding that. Is that something that you'll just notify all the previous applicants, or is that something that will be part of the announcement when, prior to the application going out? So, hey, here's LTAC is coming. We are gonna have a workshop, a webinar, whatever we're gonna do. How's that gonna?
All of the above, yeah, we would, try to, all of the applicants that we know and have contact information, we try to send that information. We'd be posting it on our website as well, on that new page that has been updated with all of the information. We'd likely be releasing news or a press release too, so it's on the front page of our website. And we can look at, also promoting it on our social media as well as our Lacey Life. So we do plan on getting the word out once we have that established to get people to learn more about what LTAC is and what could be eligible for funding.
Okay.
All right, well, Chair, that
Okay.
is the end of that information. Any additional questions?
No, a lot of
Chad,
information.
you got anything on that? You good?
No, I'm good. This is all wonderful news and I'm really excited and thank you everyone that's involved. I think it's amazing.
All right, so next on our agenda, we have our advisory board stipend program and email addresses, and back to Shannon. And it looks like Elisa Fontaine is also on there as presenter.
Great, well, we're gonna get the slide deck up here in just a second. And so just to give a little background while we're waiting for this to come up here. This was a program that the city council approved late last year to provide stipends for volunteers serving on advisory boards. And so our plan is just to give a very brief overview of what the program is and then how some of you may be able to participate in the program. So
I think I'm exempt.
yes.
You might be able to.
I'm exempt.
You're exempt
No.
too?
No, I'm exempting myself.
Oh, there you
And that you can do.
Yeah.
So that is one of the features that we tied into this program. So just really quickly, we're gonna go over the stipend program. We're gonna go over the demographic survey. We're gonna talk about civic clerk, and then Alyssa is gonna walk through a lot of kind of steps, and then she'll be here to help too if you need any help with accessing this information. So just really quickly, the stipend program itself was to offset incurred expenses for participating on city advisory boards. So this could include things like travel, parking, internet, childcare. There could be other things as well. And these expenses could present barriers to participation from community members. So with the program itself, the advisory board members are still volunteers. They don't become employees of the city, but they would receive a stipend for participating. So just to kind of give a kind of reason of why we were looking at this program, and this went through our Commission on Equity, and then it went to every advisory board, well, most of the advisory boards, I'll say here at the city, not every, and then went before City Council. But when we look at 3 community members, you can see that there's some differences between the community members. You've got community member number 1 here who's retired. He's got no children at home. They're a vehicle owner. So when you think about them, they've probably got significant discretionary time. They don't require childcare and they live pretty close to City Hall. So driving here to City Hall in their vehicle takes about 10 minutes. With that, the total time that they are at the meeting, if we say that this is a 90-minute meeting, they were there for 90 minutes, they took 10 minutes to travel there, and then they took 10 minutes to travel home. So they expended a total of 110 minutes. When we think about the gas for the travel, it was about $3. So their total cost to go to the meeting was about $3. This is very different from community member 2 and community member 3. With community member 2, you can see that they're in the workforce from 9 to 5. They also have children under the age of 5, and they're a single parent, and they are a vehicle owner. Given all of this information above, they probably have less discretionary time than community member number 1. They also are going to require childcare. They live a very similar distance away from City Hall. So the meeting time again is 90 minutes. Their travel time is very same. So they spend the same amount of money on gas to get to and from City Hall. The difference is that they had to get childcare, and childcare is expensive. And so in this particular example, they have expended $50 on childcare. So while their time commitment was the same, their total expenditure to attend and participate on the advisory board meeting was significantly higher at $53. We can see very similarly with community member 3, who's a transit user and has no high-speed internet. If they were to either get childcare or get high-speed internet, the cost would increase to participate. So the program itself is designed to be applicable to City of Lacey advisory boards, including this one. And also any ad hoc advisory boards or task force created by the Lacey City Council. It wouldn't apply to our regional boards. So the program participants will have the opportunity to opt in on an annual basis. And if they don't opt in by a date, which is going to be by the end of February or 2 months after they join a board, then they are opted out of the program. For those who do opt in, they would receive a $50 stipend per meeting attended, up to $500 annually. And this would run from a calendar year, so running from January to December. The stipends themselves will be distributed at minimum 4 times per year, although as we get into the groove of things, that could increase, but the idea is that it will never decrease. It'll always be at least 4 times a year. And importantly, stipends will need to follow all relevant tax requirements. The program does not apply, like I mentioned, to regional advisory board members. It also doesn't apply to council members and city employees who may be serving on advisory boards. The idea is that we will go back to report in front of the Lacey City Council on an annual basis on the impacts of the program. So we're actually planning to do that here in a couple of weeks with the City Council. And that the implementation is being done really by our city clerk's office. So thank you, Alyssa, and your team for helping with this. And then also by the city manager's office and the finance department.
So have we started it already?
We have started it, and actually you all are the last board that we need information from because you haven't met yet. Every other board we've had the opportunity to get in front of. And so we are hoping that we can get your opt-ins and your opt-outs fairly quickly.
So what have you seen as far as people taking advantage of this, and is it helping get volunteers?
Yeah, so I think,
Committees?
I can speak a lot to what we've seen. So what we've seen so far, and again, we have 3 outstanding members who need to determine whether or not they want to opt in, and you are one of them.
Yeah.
Is that about 50% are opting in and 50% have opted out. As far as getting more volunteers, I think that's going to be something that we want to look over a long period of time. As you know, we don't have openings all of the time, and that people can stay on advisory boards for several terms. And so at this point in time, we can't say if we've seen an increase because we haven't had to do significant
Yeah, we
recruitments.
haven't had enough time. Yeah, that was kind of crazy for me to ask that question.
No, it's a great question, and that's why we want to go back in front of council every year and say, hey, here's what we're seeing.
Great. So as Shannon mentioned, I've got some handouts. And I will also be following up with our remote participants and excused members for this board. But we are looking to have you opt in or opt out and provide that to the city so that we can have tracking mechanisms moving forward. Those handouts will contain some information just very similarly to what we've just outlined, as well as some additional information that will be coming if you should opt in. Our finance department will be reaching out through platform Payment Works for those electronic payments for opt-in members. And then we'll connect with you after this meeting, and then I will also follow up an email. I don't have any more information on the actual handout itself, but something that we will also this ties into, and we're doing it as a physical handout for this meeting, but for our other advisory board members, we reached out via a city issued email. And so those emails are actually, I have email address information for you all as well. And this is something that as a tool, as a LTAC advisory board member, that you will be able to utilize for all the communications for meeting information, planning, agenda materials, all of that moving forward. And we will utilize that email correspondence to tie to the Payment Works information as well, so that way everything is taken out of your personal email addresses, and this is really for your role and capacity here on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. Any questions so far?
So you should expect an email from Alyssa here the next couple of days, walking you through that information.
Yep.
You haven't already?
I actually, because for this meeting in preparation, I have an email and temporary password with me here with some instructions depending on what you would like to accomplish. I will also follow up electronically for our remote and excused members, but determining which device you would like to sign into your email, if it is gonna be a mobile device or a computer or laptop device, and assisting with that because there can be some technology troubleshooting depending on what you currently have set up. So we are doing it through Outlook application, and it is a government at cityoflacey.org domain. So making sure that we set that up successfully so that you can access that and it's separate from all your other accounts that you may have.
So as an exempt person, I still need to opt out?
What's that?
As an exempt person, I still need to opt out?
Nope.
No, I'm good.
Nope.
Okay. It's you two,
I have to opt out, yeah.
Chad opt in, opt out.
And so we'll be reaching out to you on that one, and we
Okay.
would appreciate a quick turnaround on that one, so that way, again, we're gonna be presenting to council here pretty shortly, and we'd like to show them a full perspective of how the program has been implemented and what that opt-in or opt-out rate is.
Expect an email probably tomorrow morning.
So connected with the opt-in and the opt-out, the other thing that we're doing is we're also asking our advisory board members to take a demographic survey. And the reason that we are asking our members to take this is so that we can see if there are missing perspectives on our advisory boards. And if there are, that we can take a look at improving our outreach and engagement efforts. Currently we don't know. And so we want to collect a little bit of data so that way we can make some informed decisions on how we do some of our outreach and get to maybe some voices that haven't always had the opportunity or been invited to participate on city advisory boards. So importantly, the opt-in and the demographic data, just want to make very clear, are never put together. It's going to be a separate survey on the demographic information. And so everything on that survey is going to have all of that personally identifiable data scrubbed. It won't be connected in any way. And then we'll take that data and we'll aggregate it and compare it against, really what we want to compare it against is the community. We want to see, compared to the city of Lacey, how does our advisory board reflect our community or not reflect?
Good.
So the questions that are going to be asked on the demographic survey are going to be your age category, your racial identity, your ethnic identity, and these are specifically aligned with the Census Bureau. Languages spoken, so if you speak a language other than English, what language do you speak or what languages do you speak? Do you identify as having a disability? What's your annual income? Do you own a home? Your gender identity, your sexual identity, your highest level of education, and then your veteran status.
Have sexual orientation.
Yeah, so this was a question that came up as we were reviewing this with not only the Commission on Equity, but also with our youth council of just trying to understand kind of who is representing. So when we kind of look across different perspectives, what might that look like? Now, I will say with sexual identity and gender identity, right now, we don't have any comparables with that. The Census Bureau doesn't really collect this data. They've done kind of spot tests in places, but we don't have anything to compare it. But it just shows, are there a variety of voices on the advisory boards from just a different perspective?
And so when we issue this, are we, I feel like we should be optional on.
All of the questions are optional. That's a great point. You do not need to answer all of the questions. You could go in there and you could say, I'm only gonna answer 2, and that would be fine.
Is it kind of shown that way? Like, is it showing like, hey, these are optional, you don't have to answer these?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And you could not fill out any information, hit submit, and it would submit.
Oh, this one's mine. So, tying back into our, meeting facilitation and transparency for the public, and, as you know, Deputy Mayor Miller, we have a, new agenda management platform that is called Civic Clerk. And so, you all will be able to be getting your LTAC meeting materials through this portal. Shannon did show, an outline that, kind of gave all of the historic meetings for LTAC, the approved minutes, the agenda materials, presentations, as well as the media coverage for that. And so that ties into Civic Clerk. It will be something that will be available to you as board members here on LTAC, and assist with our live meeting process and getting those materials to you all as well as the public moving forward. So just wanted to highlight that as well.
Will that be an expectation for the entire committee? So we would be supplying the the pads, the iPads, like on a temporary, because I remember a couple times you just, hey, here's an iPad for you, for you, for you. Is that so that we can, is that what we're gonna do in the future to get everybody logged into Civic Clerk?
So yes, so with the city issued email addresses, you will have a authentication for Civic Clerk. That's how we run the meeting in the clerk's office to show, you know, the roll call and attendance. It is not mandatory. You know, members can follow along in any way that they choose, whether it's their own device, paper. We do have the loaner iPads that we can make available. If you are logging into the board member access, that is something that LTAC members would have to use their city issued email address and their own unique password. I'm not able to keep those passwords, and these are the loaner iPads that get scrubbed. So that is something that they can absolutely do and follow along, but it's not quite to the same threshold as like the city council meetings and interaction.
Excellent.
Right, any other questions on that?
So that, are we
Well,
able
we'll
to?
find out. I'll find out tomorrow morning if I get an email.
Oh, I've got a handout for you. You're here.
Oh.
Okay, so then the last item on our agenda tonight is our land acknowledgement, and back to our Assistant City Manager.
Well, thank you, Chair. So the last thing I just wanted to bring before this body is that the city council adopted a land acknowledgement policy back in September of 2023. And as part of this policy, it allows advisory boards to determine whether or not they want to add a land acknowledgement reading to their advisory board meetings. And so the purpose of having this on the agenda today was to bring it up for a discussion as to whether or not the LTAC committee would like to add the land acknowledgement reading to the agenda.
Are you looking for a vote on that tonight?
Yes,
You are.
and the options could be to add the land acknowledgement, or it could be to take no action, or maybe something else that the committee wants to discuss.
So just so you guys know and understand, in our council meetings, I have been reading the full acknowledgement. I enjoy reading the full acknowledgement. I enjoy definitely, like, you know, acknowledging the tribe and their land and the Medicine Creek Treaty. We don't have to do the full acknowledgement. We can ask for a condensed version of it. But if you haven't heard it, I probably should, you know, if you don't mind.
Is it, I've heard it.
You
yeah.
have, okay.
Chad,
Chad,
I'm
you've
sure,
heard it too?
many times.
Okay, we can go with like a condensed version. I like to read the full version in the city council meetings, because I like to give the tribe as much props as I possibly can. But we don't have to do all 300 characters of it for an LTAC meeting, unless you guys truly want to.
I'm in favor of
It would
doing,
be, oh, go ahead, Ruth, I'm sorry.
no, you go
In
ahead.
favor of doing what?
The condensed version, the smaller version.
Chad?
I can go either way. The authenticity is the most important thing, is making sure that what we say is actually what we're practicing, because I've seen a lot of people give the land acknowledgement and then they're like, in other business, and it's just like, it's a thought. So I think it's really important, if, as long as we're saying those words, that we're showing how we're doing, how we're acknowledging. Like, we're not just saying the words and they become empty. It's how are we as a board and a body actually living the words that we're saying. So that would be my only thing, is, you know, I don't want it to be trendy. I've gone to theater where I sit there and watch somebody give that curtain speech, and then they say, okay, we checked that box, and now we're moving on to the next subject. So I just want to keep that in mind. I really want to make sure it's authentic. So, because that's important.
And it wouldn't be any less authentic here than it is at our city council meetings or our, have we done it at work session?
We didn't,
I'm not sure.
we have it on the
I
agenda.
think
Yes, correct,
okay.
correct. Thank you.
So I don't think it would be any less authentic, especially with me reading it. So we have that part down. I wanna, you know, there's a couple of versions. I've heard Mayor Ryder, you know, do kind of a condensed version, and I have yet to do that because I think that's something that he just kind of has in his mind. But we may be able to, I'm gonna say, you know, let's vote on this. And let's, I don't want to vote on like, hey, we're gonna read the whole thing every time,
Mhm.
right? So let's get a vote on this, and then we will agree on what parts we can shorten a little bit. Let's do that.
So Chair, maybe if I could just add a couple of
Please go
things
ahead.
on the land acknowledgement and the policy itself. So I think, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were doing was setting a consistent standard for groups to use. And so the purpose is that we know when we are doing a land acknowledgement as a city, that it's consistent across advisory boards, on signage, at events and meetings. And so what I would recommend this body, if they're looking to have something maybe just a little shorter, is to adopt the abbreviated land acknowledgement on the agenda items, and then at the discretion of the presiding officer, maybe to shorten it based off of the abbreviated land acknowledgement that would be now on the meeting agendas themselves.
Gotcha. So I would concur to that with that. So if we acknowledge this abbreviated version, and this is consistent across all the boards so far.
Correct. All of the boards that have taken action, and I couldn't tell you how many at this point in time have. I do know that most that I can think of that I attend do currently have the abbreviated land acknowledgement on it.
Got it.
Let's be consistent. Yeah.
Let's be consistent. So can I get a motion to acknowledge the reading of the abbreviated land
So
acknowledgement?
move.
Can I get a second?
I will
Alright.
second.
All right, well, it has been
Can
moved
we
and
have-
seconded that
Can we have
to,
further discussion?
absolutely. It's moved and seconded.
okay.
Let's discuss it. Go ahead.
Perfect. My question is just, and I'm sorry, I don't watch a lot of the city council meetings just because they coincide with work. Do we have a mechanism in place to how we are working with the First Nations and the people, the First Peoples? Do we talk about our projects that we are actively participating with? Shannon, maybe you can answer that, or Deputy Mayor. I just want to make sure that we're not just, I don't want to be seen as trendy by doing a land acknowledgement. And I understand by reading it, but I want to make sure that there is a mechanism in place that talks about how we are working with the tribes that are in our area, or maybe that is covered in city council meetings. That's my question for this group.
Chad, I think that's a really great question, and I guess it's not necessarily stated after every land acknowledgement how the city is, but I can tell you that the city does actively work with the Nisqually Indian tribe on a number of projects and issues in the community. And that includes meeting with the Nisqually Indian Tribe Council too on a regular basis. And there are, several projects in the community that we're actively involved in. And I don't know if you want to add anything, Deputy Mayor Miller.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit of something. If the tribe had a best friend, it would be the city of Lacey. Yeah, we do a lot together and we meet on a regular basis. So we are not doing this to get any exposure. We're not doing this for likes. We're doing this because our relationship with them is genuine and authentic.
Okay.
Chad,
and I don't feel like we need to say at our meetings what we're doing. That's not the point I'm going for. I just want to make sure that we're staying as authentic, and what we say is what we believe, because I've just seen it too often where it's a check mark, and I don't want to be part of that. So
Totally understand.
And Chad, I'd also add too that we worked with members of the Nisqually tribe on crafting the policy too, and the land acknowledgement and the abbreviated land acknowledgement.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You bet. So it has been moved and seconded to add the reading of the land acknowledgement to all lodging tax advisory committee meetings. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes unanimously. So from here on, we will be reading the abbreviated land acknowledgement at our lodging advisory committee meetings. And with that, it appears as though we have reached the end of our agenda. Unless somebody has something further. Okay, seeing none, then with no objections, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you for all being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to
Sorry for
see you.
being late.
Thanks for